Hi, this is Khaled from Navitas. In our previous videos, we talked about wind tunnel simulation using computer softwares, and we demonstrated how we can use the softwares to give us the results and the loads generated from the wind on a specific building. We usually study that within the whole urban environment to give us a bit more accurate results. Today we're gonna take this a bit further and analyze the same module, but with more detailed wind analysis. And what's important here in this demonstration is to show you the behavior of wind in areas such as Al-Abdali, where the shape and the location of the buildings might generate unexpected wind loads in specific areas due to generation of tunneling and might generate even uplift forces. So we have already run the simulation for this specific model because this takes a long time, and we're going to share some of the results with you today. So this is Al Abdali area, and we have the wind coming from the west, west north, west south side, and we have assumed a standard wind load that is known in this area. And as you can see, we have a west-east corridors generated in between buildings. Then we have masses, and we have different types of shapes for different buildings, and we're gonna look at the wind analysis in this area. So our first slide is gonna be a XY section, and okay, so we're gonna just open that. Let us see it from a perspective view. Okay, so what we have here is a slide showing us the wind speed at a specific level. What's unique in this program is that we can actually shift that to any level that we require. So if we're studying at a ground level, so you see now we're analyzing the wind speed on this specific level. We can go a bit higher, so here we're going a bit up. Okay, so now only part of Al-Abdali is okay, so we're looking at areas now above part of the roof of some of the buildings. Still, some of the other buildings we're studying at almost the roof level. Still, for instance, for Al-Abdali Hospital, this is a bit higher in level, so you can see still we're analyzing it on the podium level. We can always change the slide to a transparent, showing us exactly where we stand. So let's go a bit higher, okay, and look at what's happening at that specific level above the podium of Al-Abdali Hospital. We go back, for instance, for a solid shaded view, so we can see easily now. Okay, looking at it from the top view, so you can see now that the different speeds that we have for the wind at this specific location, where at an different level we have for instance a low wind speed, we go slightly above the podium and suddenly we have a high speed. Let's go down to the level of the pedestrian almost. So if you look here carefully, you'll find out that we have a tunneling between these buildings. So actually this is generating a very high wind speed, if you look carefully, the generated wind speed is actually above or higher in altitude than the starting wind speed at the first of the model, which means that the shape of the building is gonna generate more wind speed in altitude in specific locations. Here we're looking at the wind velocity in the x direction. We can also look at, for instance, shift that to the z direction and look carefully at other areas. So we have here a higher speed on the z direction, so we have an uplift in some specific areas. Looking, for instance, at this specific building, we have an uplift, also wind speed, in the courtyard. If we increase, make the level a bit higher, so we look at now almost at the podium. We haven't yet gone above the podium level, but we can see here that the wind speed is going in the z direction with even a higher altitude. This is important to look at carefully when you studying any specific project. To look at this a bit careful, more in details, what we're gonna do now is actually add a couple of new layers. So looking at this building, let's go back to the original. Okay, so we're looking at now this specific building. Let's switch back this to the z direction. And let's actually add, before we go to the other slide, let's add some vector. Okay, it's becoming now interesting. So let's look carefully at what's happening in this area. Top view, we zoom in. So we can see that the wind is coming from the west, but due to the shape of the building, we expect to have in this specific area some turbulences, creating a wind coming from the west. So actually, if you're standing in this area, you will have a positive wind, but it's coming from the west. While in this area, you will have actually a negative wind. So this is also important to carefully look at when you're analyzing any building, and to make sure that all these factors are looked at carefully when we're studying the facades. Same thing, if you look carefully at what's happening here, some effect is being created in this area, and you can see now, even if you look closely, you'll be able to see that some of these loads are creating an air turbulence in this area. As we said, let's study also add additional sections. So here we have added a section in this area. Okay. Okay, this is clear now. So actually, what you can see here demonstrated is the vertical wind created due to the shape of the building and is working on the z direction. Let's just switch this to shaded. Okay, so now we can actually move and analyze the wind, what's happening exactly in this building. Due to the shape of it, you can easily see that the wind created on the upward direction. So this specific elevation for the facade consultant has to be looked at carefully, and then we understand that there is an uplift wind in this area. This might create some problems if we have vents in this location. Has to be carefully studied, and this additional load has to be analyzed. Alright, so it's, I think, very clear now how this is behaving. If you need also, you can look at the turbulences in this area. We can go and switch it to the vector to the Z direction, for instance. Okay, that's, we need to adjust the scale of our vectors. Okay, so this shows us now the uplift wind that is generated in this area. Going back to another section, let's add another section near the Rotana Hotel. So looking at it from this direction now. Same thing, here we're looking at also an uplift wind just near the entrance. If any of you have visited the Rotana area, you could easily feel a big high, or a high, very high actually, wind turbulence near the entrance. Let's go with this section a bit lower. Okay, almost at the pedestrian level now. And if we go and zoom a bit more here, okay, let's change the vectors here to X direction. So we said we have turbulences in the X direction. In addition to that, we have an uplift turbulence in the Z direction. So this is creating actually a high turbulence near the entrance of Rotana Hotel. So obviously this wasn't really considered when the design was made for this. So the hotel management tried to add on a couple of additional masses, entrances, to avoid or try to eliminate as much as possible the effect of these turbulences. To be able to see the movement of the wind a bit in a clear form, we're gonna switch these sections off, and we're gonna add what we call traces. So we start with a very fine trace of the wind. As we said, we're coming from the west, so let's, okay, look at what we have here. So again, let's look at it from this angle, for instance. So we can see easily now that we have the air coming from the west, going through the model and generating some kind of tunneling effect in some of these areas. If we make it a bit more dense to give us more indication of what's happening. So orbiting around this area, you can see easily now that the wind is tunneling in the first. This is the main entrance for the Abdul area, and this is the pedestrian area. So we make it a bit slightly more dense even to be able to see what's happening. Okay, so first thing that we want to talk about is the effect in Main Abdali Street, where we have huge tunneling going on here. Alright, and another one just at the start of the boulevard area. Now, due to the shape of the buildings, as we said, we have concentration of air in this passage, creating a wind tunnel, and then this is faced by another building. And if we go a bit downward, okay, you can now see what's happening. The air is actually lifted up, and the funny thing is actually that this tunnel of air that we can see here is going in a funny direction due to the shape of the building and the existence of Al Abdali Mall. And what's crazy is that the whole thing is going inside this building. As you can see, this tunnel of wind is going into the courtyard of this building, creating actually a very funny kind of wind turbulence. Want to see this clearer? Let's look at it. So we're gonna animate that to make sure that we see what's happening clearly. Okay. So you see what's happening here is that the wind is coming and creating a crazy turbulence above this area. This has to be carefully looked at for specifically this elevation and for the top and the roof of the building. So this clearly shows that the wind acts in a sometimes funny way that we need to consider when we're doing any studies for any building. Of course, we can also add more traces. For instance, we can add the full trace for the whole area. Now you can see what's happening here. So we have a crazy wind turbulence in the center here, and we have very high wind speed around it. So this has to be carefully studied. In any area such as this building, for instance, here, you can also easily see and evaluate if you have also any kind of tunneling between the buildings. So as you can see here, we have a slight wind tunneling in this area. I hope this video is helpful for engineers also to understand the necessity to study carefully the full urban area when any study is being done on any building. it's not enough actually just to have a simple wind tunnel test. We can see the hole now along with the direction and the section. Pretty amazing what the softwares can provide us with today. I hope this is beneficial for engineers, developers, contractors. Please contact us if you require any further information regarding these services that we can provide you with. Thank you for your time and have a nice day.